The galaxy is a tapestry of whispers. A billion voices, speaking in clicks and chitters, in scent markers and bioluminescent pulses, in subspace harmonics and quantum entanglement. For millennia, these voices wove a story of civilization, of empires that rose on worlds of crystal and fell into dust, of traders who sailed the solar winds, and of philosophers who pondered the great, silent dark between the stars. And in this tapestry, there was a thread so new, so faint, it was almost invisible. A thread of ambition, of chaos, of strange, contradictory passions. A thread called humanity. We were the newcomers. The infants. We stumbled out of our cradle, blinking in the stellar light, our ships crude and noisy, our diplomats earnest and awkward. The great powers of the galactic core looked upon us with a mixture of amusement and pity. We had so much energy, so much potential, but we were unrefined. We had not yet learned the patient rhythms of cosmic time. And then, there were the Kthar. The Kthar were not a major power, but they were an ancient one. A species of sleek, chitinous beings, moving with the fluid grace of predators. Their society was a mercantile hegemony, their culture built on a single unshakable principle, value. Everything had a price. Every life, every resource, every moment of time, could be quantified, traded, and leveraged. To the Kthar, the universe was not a mystery to be explored, but a ledger to be balanced. Their greatest achievement, the cornerstone of their culture, was the galactic stock stream, a real-time pan-galactic market that traded not in simple credits, but in futures, in probabilities, in the very potential of species and worlds. They saw the chaotic, emotional, unpredictable nature of humanity not as a curiosity, but as a volatile asset. An asset that needed to be managed. Or, if necessary, liquidated. They issued a warning, a simple corporate communiqué. The human experiment, they declared, presents an unacceptable risk to market stability. Cease extrasolar expansion and submit to a Kthar governorship, or face corrective measures. Earth's response was a unified, if naive, refusal. We would not be caged. We would not be owned. The Kthar High Board saw this not as an act of defiance, but as a poor investment decision. And they had a policy for poor investments. The Kthar Armada did not descend upon Earth. That would have been messy, inefficient. It would have destroyed infrastructure, which had latent value. Instead, a single obsidian-hulled vessel, the Profit Margin, entered the Sol system and took up a high orbit over Mars. And then, they began the broadcast. It was not a declaration of war. It was a live galactic telecast on the stock stream. A reality show of annihilation. The title, flashing in cold, precise glyphs across a billion screens, Asset Liquidation, Terra. The host was a Kthar executor named Zal. His voice was a dry, sibilant rasp, devoid of malice, devoid of anger. It was the voice of a man reading a quarterly report. Fellow sentients, Zal began, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the rust-red sphere of Mars below. The entity known as humanity has failed its viability assessment. Its emotional volatility and expansionist tendencies present a systemic risk. Today, we perform a necessary market correction. Observe the efficiency of Kthar methodology. The first target was the Martian colonies. Great, domed cities, filled with engineers, botanists, families. They were not military outposts. They were testaments to human stubbornness, turning a dead rock into a second home. The Profit Margin did not fire lasers or plasma. It released a nanite swarm. A gray cloud, silent and inexorable, descended upon the largest dome, Eden Prime. On the broadcast, viewers could see the terrified faces of humans pressed against the transparent aluminum, watching their doom fall from the sky. Zal provided commentary. Note the resource reclamation process. The nanites will disassemble the structure and its organic contents into base elements, carbon, hydrogen, trace minerals. A 98.7% efficiency rate. Far superior to explosive decompression, which results in significant mass loss. The gray cloud touched the dome. There was no sound on the broadcast, but the imagination of the galaxy filled it in. A silent, screaming horror as the dome, the buildings, the people, dissolved. They didn't explode, they crumbled like sandcastles in the tide, into a fine gray dust that was swiftly scooped up by tractor beams. In 10 minutes, where a city of 1 million souls had stood, there was only a smooth, polished crater. The galactic audience watched, a complex stew of emotions flowing through the stream. The Glesians, gentle fungal-based life, felt a profound photosynthetic sorrow. The reptilian Thul, a warrior race, felt a cold disdain for such a cowardly, impersonal form of combat. Many others simply felt a numb acceptance. This was the Kthar way. It was business. On Earth, there was panic, rage, and a grief so vast it seemed to crack the very sky. World leaders screamed for retaliation, but our fleets were exploration vessels, not warships. A handful of brave captains charged the profit margin. They were erased from existence with the same dispassionate efficiency as the Martian cities. Zal noted their ship's mass and composition as additional reclaimed assets. The liquidation continued. The Luna cities. The orbital habitats. The great shipyards over Jupiter. One by one, they were dissolved into dust and added to the Kthar ledgers. The death toll, displayed in a neat, running tally on the broadcast, climbed into the millions. Zal was the perfect, horrifying narrator. The human emotional response is fascinating, he mused at one point, as the screen showed the frantic, hopeless attempts at evacuation on a Jovian moon. Inefficient, but a potent source of kinetic energy. Perhaps we can harness it in future iterations. The galaxy began to see humanity not as a failed asset, but as a tragedy. They saw our bravery, our desperation, our mothers clutching children, our engineers trying to reroute power until the very nanites ate through their consoles. They saw us fighting for every second of life, even when the outcome was certain. It was illogical. It was compelling. And then, the broadcast reached the 9 million mark. The target was a massive generation ship, the Odyssey, still under construction at the Lagrange Point shipyard. It was to be our first true interstellar ark, a vessel designed to carry 100,000 souls on a 1,000-year journey to another star. It was a symbol of our hope, our future. The nanite swarm engulfed it. The beautiful, skeletal structure, the dream of generations, melted away like ice in fire. The tally on the screen updated, 9,001,347. And then, something changed on Earth. The panic, the rage, the screaming. It stopped. A strange, profound silence fell over the human networks. The frantic cries for help, the prayers, the curses, all ceased. It was a silence more terrifying than any noise. It was the silence of a decision being made. Zal noticed. The asset appears to have entered a state of catatonic shock. A predictable psychological response to terminal stress. The liquidation process will now accelerate. He was wrong. It was not shock. It was focus. Deep beneath the Alps, in a command center that had been designed for a catastrophe no one ever believed would come, a woman named Dr. Eris Thorne watched the Odyssey die on her screen. Tears streamed down her face. But her hands were perfectly steady. She was the head of Project Janus, a theoretical defense initiative so secret, only a handful of people knew of its existence. Its purpose was to find a weapon that could counter an existential threat. It had found one. A terrible one. It was not a planet killer. It was not a fleet of warships. It was an idea. Eris Thorne opened a secure channel. Her voice, calm and clear, echoed in bunkers from Beijing to Washington, from the deep-sea habitats of the Pacific to the last remaining orbital station. This is Director Thorne. Authorization, Janus Omega. The Kthar have declared our species a liquidated asset. They operate on a principle of pure cold value. She took a slow, shuddering breath. It is time to show them the one human asset they failed to price into their model. The cost of a ghost. On the Kthar broadcast, Zal was preparing to announce the final phase, the liquidation of Earth's biosphere. But his sensor officer let out a sharp, confused click. Executor. We are detecting a massive, synchronized energy surge from the human homeworld. Non-weapon grade. It appears to be a data burst. Zal swiveled. A final, desperate transmission? A plea? Record it. Their despair may have novelty value. It's not a transmission from them, Executor, the officer clarified, his chitinous plates shifting in unease. It's a transmission through them. They are using their entire planetary network, every satellite, every ground station, even their personal communication devices, as a single focused antenna array. The target is the Galactic stock stream itself. The data packet hit the stream. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a virus. It was a file. A simple, uncompressed media file, broadcast on every channel, to every species, on every world. It was titled, Ledger Entry 9,001,348. Zal, intrigued by this bizarre final act of defiance, ordered it to be played on the main broadcast. Let the galaxy see the last, futile, act of a terminated asset. The file opened. It was not a declaration of war. It was not a curse. It was a name. Lena Petrova. And beside it, a picture. A young woman with laughing eyes and a smudge of grease on her cheek, standing in front of the framework of the Odyssey. Then a video clip, just a few seconds long, of her teaching her young daughter how to whistle. The sound was clear, a sweet, warbling note. The file moved on. David Kahn. A portrait of a man in a Martian botanist's uniform, holding a vibrant, genetically engineered apple the size of his head. He was smiling proudly. Chloe and Ben Carter. A wedding photo, taken under the dome of Eden Prime, the red Martian sky a backdrop to their joy. On and on it went. Name after name. Face after face. Not soldiers. Not leaders. The 9 million. The baker on Luna who always gave an extra cookie to the children. The old musician on the Jupiter station who played a violin whose wood came from Earth. The teams of engineers, the teachers, the artists, the dreamers. Each one was given a moment. A snapshot of a life. A laugh caught on a personal comms device. A child's drawing taped to a refrigerator. A love poem scrawled on a datapad. It was a tsunami of memory. A deluge of ghosts. For the first time, the galaxy did not see 9 million units liquidated. They saw Lena. They saw David. They saw Chloe and Ben. They saw the human soul, in all its beautiful, messy, individual glory. The broadcast showed the Kthar crew on the bridge of the profit margin. They had stopped their work. Their manipulators were still. They were watching the endless, scrolling list of the dead, each one a story cut short. Zal felt something alien stir within his carapace. A flicker of something. A system error in his perfectly logical mind. This is inefficient, he hissed, but the conviction was gone from his voice. Cease this broadcast. It serves no market purpose. But it was too late. The data packet was not just a broadcast. It was a program. It began to interface with the very foundation of the stock stream, the Kthar's cultural and economic heart. It started cross-referencing. It found the Kthar homeworld, Kthar Prime. It didn't display military targets or government centers. It began pulling up the public records, the family albums, the social streams of the Kthar people. A name appeared on the screen, Zal, executor of the Third Spire. Next to it, a picture from his early maturation. A younger, less rigid Zal. Then, a picture of his broodsire, a respected metallurgist. Then his brooddam, a composer of financial algorithms that were considered art among her kind. The human program was not threatening them. It was understanding them. It was building the same ledger for the Kthar that it had built for humanity. And then the final devastating line of the human data packet executed. A single sentence, translated into every language in the galaxy, appeared on the screen, superimposed over the face of Zal's broodmate. We see you too. And in that moment, Zal understood. He understood the miscalculation. The Kthar had thought value was about resources, about energy, about mass. Humanity had just demonstrated that the most profound value, the most powerful force in the universe, was story. A story could not be liquidated. A story could not be erased. It could only be told. And by erasing 9 million stories, the Kthar had not balanced their ledger, they had created a debt. A debt of memory. On worlds across the galaxy, the silent horror broke. The Thul, the warriors, let out a low, respectful growl. The Glesians pulsed with a light of shared mourning. 100,000 species looked at the humans, not with pity, but with a dawning, terrifying respect. They had not gone quietly. They had used their last breath not to scream, but to speak the names of their dead. They had weaponized their own history. On the bridge of the profit margin, Zal looked at the face of his broodmate on the screen. He tried to quantify the feeling in his thorax. He tried to run a cost-benefit analysis on the concept of grief. The equations broke. The logic failed. He turned to his crew. Cease, All liquidation operations. The order was a whisper. It was too late for that, too. The human response was not over. The silence from Earth had been the calm before the storm, but the storm was not one of fire and steel. It was a storm of consequence. A new data packet hit the stream. From Earth. From Dr. Eris Thorne. Her face appeared on the Galactic broadcast. It was pale, etched with grief, but her eyes held a fire that was colder and more terrifying than any star. Executor Zal. Kthar High Board. Galactic Community. You have witnessed 9 million entries in our ledger. You have seen the value you attempted to erase. The debt is now due. She did not gesture to a fleet. She gestured to the data streaming behind her. The Kthar culture is built upon the stock stream. It is your economy, your government, your identity. You believe it is a system of pure, unbiased value. We have just shown you its fatal flaw. It cannot quantify a soul. And because it cannot, it is vulnerable. Zal stared, his mind racing. What are you doing? We are not launching missiles at your world, Zal, Eris said, her voice like iron. We are launching an audit. Across the galaxy, the systems of the stock stream began to stutter. The human program, a beautiful, terrible piece of code born of collective grief, was doing what humanity did best. It was adapting. It was learning. It was connecting. It began cross-referencing every transaction, every trade, every asset the Kthar had ever liquidated. It found the first species they had ever subsumed, a race of gentle avian creatures who had been corrected for having a song that disrupted Kthar mining operations. It found their names. It found their faces. It added them to the ledger. It moved to the next. And the next. A history of galactic predation, not for conquest or glory, but for marginal percentage points of profit, was being laid bare. The liquidated assets were given back their stories. The Kthar's perfect, sterile history was being flooded with the ghosts of 1 million murdered species. The stream, the very heart of Kthar power, was turning against them. It was no longer a tool of commerce. It was a monument to their crimes. Their currency, based on perceived value, became instantly worthless. Why trade in a currency managed by an entity that fundamentally misunderstood value? On Kthar Prime, the markets did not crash. They simply stopped. The Great Ledger was balanced, not by a Kthar accountant, but by human grief. The debt was too large. It was infinite. We saw their ships power down, not because we fired a shot, but because their crews were watching the stories of the beings they had turned to dust. We saw their communications networks become forums for mourning, for questioning, for a cultural shock so profound it shattered their entire worldview. The Kthar did not die in a barrage of laser fire. Their species was erased, yes, but not by human hands. It was erased by the weight of 1 million silent stares from the graves they had dug. Their culture, their identity, their very reason for being, was proven to be a fallacious equation. They were made obsolete by a superior logic, the logic of memory. The galactic stock stream went dark, permanently. In its place, a new network slowly began to form, built on human and Glesian and Thul protocols. They called it the Remembrance. A place to share stories, not trade futures. Executor Zal was found on the bridge of the Prophet Margin, which hung silent and dark in orbit over a scarred, but healing Earth. He was not dead. He was simply still. Staring at the screen, which now held a single permanent image, the family portrait of a human family from the Odyssey, their smiles forever frozen in time. He was the last of his kind. Not because we had killed him, but because we had shown him what he was. And in that knowledge, the Kthar had found no reason to continue. The galaxy learned a new word that day. A human word. Vengeance. But they learned its true meaning. It was not, as they first thought, about retaliation. It was about balance. It was the universe's way of ensuring that no story, no matter how small, is ever truly forgotten. That every life has a weight, a gravity, that pulls on the fabric of reality itself. The humans, the chaotic, emotional, unpredictable newcomers, had not fought the Kthar with a bigger fleet or a more powerful weapon. They had fought them with the one thing the Kthar had declared worthless. They had fought them with their hearts. And they had won the war without firing a single shot. The Kthar killed 9 million humans, live, for all the galaxy to see. And in return, Earth made sure the galaxy would never, ever forget a single one of them. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.